Hey everybody out there, my name is Dragnix and this is Crashlands. Now, over the last couple of days I've been playing the game, and one word comes to mind when thinking about the game: colorful. The game has a personality of its own, and it really mimics the creators of the game Butterscotch Shenigans as pictured in this picture here. The question I'm here to answer though is whether you'll be having a good enough time like those guys were having in the game of Crashlands. It's $15 on the Steam platform and $5 on the mobile platform. But before I begin this review, I want to make sure you guys know that this key was obtained from the developer for the purposes of review. That won't change my opinion in the end, but you should know that because of FTC guidelines, as well as the whole morals thing, you know? Now let's talk a little bit about the story and writing first. You are a delivery man for a shipping company, and basically you're trying to deliver 3 packages when this guy shows up. Now the guy isn't necessarily the most unfriendliest of people, but he needs a certain part for his experiment. A part that your ship has, which of course he will take for his own use at this point, thus crashing you on the nearest planet. On the planet that you crash on, there are creatures and people that you'll run across, and they've been affected by this guy in several ways. You end up becoming this sort of hero that, saves the day in certain cases, completing quests and things like that. But the thing is that you're still focused on getting back home and delivering these packages at this point. I like the dual writing element here, where there's still an obvious goal for the hero in mind, but it may not necessarily be the same thing as everybody else around him, and he may not be the hero that everyone makes him out to be, even though he does have a moral code, seemingly. Now, the game's writing definitely goes on the humorous side of things, but what I really specifically like about this writing is the way it handles it. For example, it's not going to bash you over the head with a joke, which I think some humorous games try to do and go a little bit too far with. What it's going to do, it's going to poke, it's going to prod, it's going to make little statements here and there that will add up over time. You won't get necessarily a rolling on floor laughing moment like in other games, but what you'll do is you'll have this little smirk on your face the entire game, because every little statement starts to add up over a while, and honestly I really feel like the writing as a whole came together well, which was surprising considering all the side quests and everything along that line. Now, the writing is good, but you're probably more here for the gameplay in the end, and that's where things will get a little bit decisive in terms of whether this is a purchase for you. Now, there's a couple of different elements to that gameplay in terms of combat, a crafting system, and what I would call home improvement simulator. Let's start with the combat system, because I think the combat system is going to be the decisive element for people who are going to take a close look at Crashlands and make a purchase decision or not. Now, the combat system is an action RPG with basic elements. You click on an enemy and you hit them, and those red bars that you saw there, that's the enemy attack that you'll have to dodge and weave in and out of in order to not get hit. Now, certain enemies have certain patterns of attack, and you'll have to do your best to get out of the way, because they do hit reasonably hard, even the smaller enemies, as you'll see here. You have 4 item slots at the bottom of the screen that you can use for health items, or items that you can use in battle, like a stunning wrench or a poison dart. Now, the game can be challenging at times in terms of the combat, in particular with the mouse-driven controls. Now, the game does show its mobile roots here. The thing is that everything that you control in terms of movement is with the mouse, and part of the problem here is when you get into situations where you have not a lot of distance between you and another object to dodge in between. So, for example, if I were near one of those trees at this point, I may accidentally click on the tree, go towards it, and not actually run that way like I wanted to, ending up taking damage and then taking significant damage that I can't heal that fast from. That causes a little bit of a problem, and there's no way to zoom in and out on this screen, so it's something you have to get used to. Most of this is sort of a dodge and attack mechanic, like, okay, wait for them to attack, get out of the way, and then attack at that point. And multiple enemies can really be challenging, as you see here, because they are just attacking one by one by one. I gotta take one of them down without taking damage. That can be a pretty miraculous thing in terms of being able to get through that fight. Now, luckily, you will be able to bring a pet into battle, as you see with Aku, my poison bloatfly here. This can really help you out, especially in boss battles, when you're dodging left and right and trying to not take damage in particular, as I do take a huge amount of damage right here. So now I'm able to escape, recover some health, and he's still able to get a little bit of damage on the enemy and keep the pressure on at that point. I found that in this game in particular, the pets actually made a huge difference in combat. Not having a pet almost felt like a huge disadvantage, unlike some other games in the action RPG genre. With multiple pets that you can raise at this point, whether it be the bloatfi, there's a one-legged horse that you're able to deal with. I know that sounds a little bit weird, but that's the best way I can describe it. It does sort of give you an element of, okay, which one is the best for this situation? And I did like that. I did like the fact that, each pet did feel a little bit unique in their attack range and what they could do in terms of helping me in battle. What's strange here is that the combat does have a grinding element to it. And the thing is that unlike, games like Japanese RPGs, the grinding isn't for levels, it's for equipment. The thing is that you can get multiple items or different schematics based on enemies that you defeat. As you see here, I'm going to kill this enemy and he drops a schematic that could be useful maybe for combat or maybe for an item for my home in question. The thing is that over time, there isn't a lot of different sort of strategies that you can employ. Yes, you have different items you can get, but the combat does get to feel like the same thing over and over again. It is still fun in my opinion, and I am an RPG lover. It does feel like it needs a little bit more variety, especially because of how they sort of diversify the enemies. As you see in this one area here, there's a lot of this Tantal enemy. I feel like they could have done a better job of mixing enemies together and still, make an area feel different, but, give a little bit more of a challenge. Combine them together to give me a little bit more of a problem to deal with. One thing that I really couldn't figure out, even with my about 11 hours with the game, is how the aggro system works. So when a creature notices you and attacks you, okay, it gives you that sort of Metal Gear Solid red exclamation point above their heads. But what causes that was the real question for me. I thought it was maybe the level of the creatures, but they don't seem to have levels. And even beyond the bigger creatures, I could still walk by them without them noticing. Maybe it was line of sight? No, it didn't seem to be that. I still don't know to this day, trying to figure out exactly what their AI is doing, but it can cause a little bit of variety in terms of, oh, I'm gonna run past these creatures, oh shit, I'm getting attacked at this point. I will say this, however, when the game changed things up on you in terms of combat, it worked rather well. This is the first boss fight that I was able to find at this point, and it's the only boss fight that I've found at this point, mostly because I've been doing side quests and things that, just me building the house at this point. But when it showed up, it provided a breath of fresh air. In fact, I had to craft a whole new weapon for this fight because I wanted the turbo speed boost so that I can get out of those red areas rather quickly at this point if I did enough damage over a little period of time. The combat is hit and miss for the most part with me, but I think part of the reason is the fact that this game shows its mobile roots with the combat in question. Now, I understand that you want to keep things compatible between the mobile platform and the PC platform in question, mostly because there is crossplay on this game. You can go play the mobile portion of the game and then make some progress and come back to the PC game and, keep on working off that specific progress. With that said, I wanted to see a little bit more implementation on the PC side. For example, the 4 item slots on the bottom there. In most situations, I really needed more item slots in question, mostly because I didn't feel like really changing up the items I use for like resource management, so like getting more resources in question for, upgrades and things like that, and having to switch them out with the menus in order to put items that I needed for the combat system in, especially because, well, in the middle of combat, you can't change it. Once you're in combat, you can't use the map, you can't use the item system in terms of the menus in question. And so you got to be sort of prepared going into a fight, which of course in some situations you won't be prepared. Honestly, the combat is passable, but if you're looking for something along the lines of Torchlight or, games like Deathspank, for example, I think the combat here doesn't do the justice of the action RPG as much as those other games do. But it sort of makes up for it in the base building and resource management, aka the Minecraft section of the game. Now, taking a look at the map here, I've unlocked a bunch of teleportation points throughout the map. I've done a lot of exploring and just found exactly where I wanted to go. Now, I can mark specific points with, phrases or symbols, like for example, the symbol there of the paw print or the symbol of my home in question because I put a sign down. This can mark areas that are special to you. You can, keep your pets in a specific special area, for example. This is the home that I've built. There's a lot of options that you can choose in the schematics that you find in the game, making your own little custom home that actually has some purposes in terms of in-game effects. Like for example, that bed right there can move the game from day to night, which is rather useful in certain quests. Now, again, it shows its mobile roots here. You choose the item, and then all you have to do is put your mouse cursor over it and click, and there you go. You place down the floors rather easily at this point. You also can pick them up rather easily if you click on them again at this point, and it shows you where you can't build, which is rather nice. It is very easy to do at this point, but sometimes you will end up, picking up an item that, you probably didn't want to. However, you'll see right here, like I'm missing that one portion. Oh, it's easy to switch out. Yes, I did that on purpose. That wasn't necessarily me running out of a resource early on. No, of course not. I have no idea what you're talking about. So now that I've made a horrible selection of floors all, put into one area here, let's go look at the crafting system, because that's how I make the floors in question. Now, these are all the crafting stations that I have unlocked at this point. First one you will get is the sawmill. I can craft anything from floors to weapons to armor to, little cosmetic things, or the sign that you saw that said my home in order to see it on the map. A lot of these items have uses, but it does have sort of a Minecraft-esque feel to it, where you can just sort of make your own home at this point with things like, a glowy bag chair. Now, one thing I really like about this crafting system is how it handles the weapons within the crafting system. When I craft a stone tomahawk, for example, it will give me a random quality to it, whether it be rare, extra rare, or just normal. The thing is that over time, if you craft an item over and over again, it's more likely to be rarer in that case. You get better at making this craft. I like that. There is incentives that even if you got a good item the first time, maybe you want to do it again. Maybe there's reasons to go and get more items in question. I do like that. That gives me incentive to go and, search the world in question. Now, while I'm a fan of weapon and armor crafting systems because I like getting the best bang for my buck and making the best weapon out there, in terms of cosmetic or home building elements, a la like something like Fallout 4's one, I'm not a fan of those systems in most cases. They just feel, tacked on to me. They're not my cup of tea. In this case, though, it works rather nicely. It's the simplicity of the system, the ability to easily bring up and put down things, as well as some of the unique items in question, like anchors and, the green glowing beanbag chairs. Now, some players will experience a frustration factor with the crafting system in question. Part of it has to do with the materials in question. Now, you see in the top right hand of the screen the materials I need to make this sword. It will update in terms of me getting new items in question. Okay, that's great. What it doesn't tell you in terms of the map or anything else is where to find that item. Now, some people are okay with that. Some people will get frustrated because it gives you not necessarily the greatest amount of hints in order for you to find a new item in question. There was one particular item I needed with a bone in question that it took me a while to figure out exactly what I need to do. Then I looked at the item description. It didn't necessarily help me, but then I looked at the item itself and noticed tar on it. I was like, okay, there are tar pits around here. Maybe I'll go and look for it. Okay, yes, there's a bone in question. Then I put together, okay, this is a femur from like a dinosaur, tar pits. Okay, yes, I get it. But for some players, that's going to not work for them. I do like the seed mechanic in the game so I can grow some of the materials that I need if I find the seeds in question. Yeah, they're one-time use, but when you need specific materials in question, being able to, get 10 trees in one little area is rather nice. In particular, there are bomb items that you can use in order to explode those trees to get all the materials at once. You'll also see that lack of information or direct information in quests as well. Sometimes it'll give you a general area of where to go, but when you need to figure out exactly what you need to do in that area, you'll have to look at the journal to figure out exactly what you need to do, and sometimes it's not that obvious. So for example here, it says follow the direction of the flower in question. Guess what? I picked up the flower and I don't remember which direction it was. So now I'm just searching randomly all over the place. Now, in terms of content and length and concerns that the game may not have as much content because there's a crossover to a mobile platform, rest assured that those fears seem to be unfounded. The fact of the matter is that I've got about 12 hours into the game after a little bit more recording at this point, and the thing is I haven't seen some parts of the trailer in terms of the snow levels, for example, and with the map of what I showed you before, most of that area has been this sort of grass and tar area. There seems to be a lot to explore at this point, a lot of items to see. The 60 plus hours that the developer has claimed in terms of content seems to be reasonable and on mark from what I've seen and what I can sort of extrapolate from the data that I have so far. Does the game have a repetitive nature to it? Yes. Does the game have side quests that are basically fetch quests? Yes. The writing helps with them, but in essence, you're doing the same thing over and over again in some cases. With that said, I feel the game does its best in the adventure element of the game, where you take your own pace in terms of exploring and enjoying the world. The thing is that even though I don't like certain elements of the game in terms of its implementation, in particular with its mobile roots in question, I feel the game still succeeded regardless of that. Now, I can sit here and talk about, the fishing minigame, the aesthetic, the music, and go into like a 40-minute video, but I don't like making reviews that are that long. So I want to sort of stop on a final point in question. This game has an X factor to it, and that is its accumulation and polish factor. Well, what do I mean by that? The thing is that a lot of indie games have a feature set. They have, things like a crafting system, they have a home building system, a combat system, RPG mechanics, so on and so forth. The thing is that some of those games, unfortunately, don't put the end result together well, where the, crafting system feels disjointed from the combat system, for example. That's not the case in Crashlands. What I see in Crashlands is one solid design. They're all pieces of a puzzle that all connect together to work in one big package. Sure, there are elements that I don't like about each puzzle piece in question, and I feel overall hurt the game in terms of the PC platform in question. But the fact is, those annoyances all work together very well to make a game that feels polished, the game that feels like a lot of thought was put into every element and things weren't just thrown at the screen. I like that, and I have to give Butterscotch Shenigans, all the credit in the world. This game feels like it was done by a large team in question, and for a smaller team in question, that's a very big accomplishment. So, well done, guys. In the end, I think this is a game for adventure players. Those who want to explore and, explore at their own pace. Those who want to search for those items. Those item collectors will love the fact that you have to, craft every single thing and, destroy things to find the next schematic, for example. Those who are creative in terms of the base building elements that, even though they're simple, they work rather well. Now, does the game necessarily do well for hardcore action RPG fans who want a little bit more complexity in their game? No, but the combination of elements works rather well, and I can recommend it on either the PC or the mobile platforms. With that said, do I think it works better on a mobile platform, in particular with a tablet? Yes, I do, because of the fact that you can still get a good experience in terms of the graphics and the quality of it, while the game is more suited for the sort of touch mechanics, as I've mentioned with the controls in question. In the end, Crashlands does get a recommendation from me. Now, if you do have any other questions about the game that I may not have covered, please leave them in the comment section below, and I will be happy to answer them. I know I can't hit every question in terms of the video in question, but I can more than make up for it in the comments. Alright, like this video if you found it useful. The Steam review is in the description below, and I will see you all later.